and a life so very well lived.
And I call the Honourable the Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and it's a great honour to speak at the condolence of a person I work with, Alex Gallacher. For Paula, for Caroline, for Terry, for Ian, for Frank, for the grandchildren, offer the sympathies of this parliament and so many of our colleagues. Alex was a fair income guy. You know people in this game, you know the people who play on the other football side, and although your job in here is to compete, you know the people who fair income, play by the rules, and Alex was one of those. He was also passionate about rural and regional affairs, and I remember him wanting to decentralise sections to, I think it was Port Augusta, which I think he was on a unity ticket of 1 on. But the thing about Alex that I've found is he is a person who never deserted his Labor loyalties. They were red hot in his blood, but you could negotiate with him. He didn't carry on with trivialities and rubbish. If he thought a deal needed to be done, he would go outside into the courtyard. Unfortunately, a bad habit for so many of us, have a cigarette and have a yarn about how you could try and see your way through something. And that, I think, is a very admirable trait, to be able to think not just that we're here for our nation, not just some form of pure parochial game. In his industry, it's something as living out in the country, so many of us are aware of, and one of his former good mates from our side, Senator Wacker Williams, shared a common bond. They'd both been truck drivers, and they both understood how that worked, and they both had some very similar habits. And it's an industry, of course, that takes you away from your family, takes you on the road, sleep in your cabin, stopping for fast food, pulling over at service stations where people. I've never been a long distance truck driver, but obviously very aware of it, being on the same roads as them, eating the wrong food, and trying to break down the monotony of those miles and miles and miles of what they call white line fever, by whatever you could do, anything that broke the monotony, anything that could keep you looking forward to what was 40 kilometres ahead, and of course that attracts you to things such as smoking. Today, I think what was so powerful about Alex is he had a life before he was a politician, and he brought that with him. So few these days, to be frank, come into this parliament with the life that Alex had lived, and living a life outside of politics, very similar to Wacker Williams, means that they had a capacity to cut through the BS and just get to the issue, and to understand that that sort of empathy that comes from being a person of a wider life experience. He was and had been a person who had laboured. And it's a great loss. It is a great loss. So what was also admirable about Alex is he didn't aspire for higher offices. He aspired to do his job. He wasn't the Prime Minister, he wasn't a minister, he wasn't the leader of the opposition. I don't think he was ever a shadow minister. He was. No, he wasn't. So he wasn't. And you could see that in him. He wanted to do the hard work that the Labor Party required of him. And he did the job that was given to him. And he did it with a smile on his face. And I also obviously know, and he started with me, Sterlo. Sterlo and I started at the same time. And I've just been communicating with Sterlo, and he said, tell me about the 3 things. And he said, well, he loved his family. Number 1, loved his family. He loved golf, and it sounds like he also, loved the capacity to be part of trying to direct this nation. So in closing, I don't know whether Alex was a man of faith, it doesn't know, but I thought of something in thinking about him as from Corinthians, it's 15:10, and it goes like this: "But by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace to me was not in vain. On the contrary, I worked harder than them all, though it was not I, but the grace of God that is with me." I believe that Alex, whether he had a faith or not, is with him who looks over all of us.